The ISBE suggests that the way the sun shines on the mountain, it tends to look like come up with a number of 2.5 to 3 million people that he's leading out of Egypt. Now, just to give you a fix on that, that's the approach. Now, what kind of logistical problems would there be in leading all of the people of those 3 states and say, we're all moving to Wisconsin? Okay, I mean, okay, yeah, just keeping them together, okay? Okay, okay, yeah, because you got older, younger, you've got those who are infirm, those who are healthy. I mean, so keeping them all together. Go ahead, Guy. Okay, yeah. I mean, that'd be a huge problem. I mean, just to try to get the message across. Okay, we're moving. When are we moving? We're moving tomorrow or next week or whatever. Okay, so how do we get ready for? I mean, that message has to go out and out and out and out and out and out to try to get to the farthest reaches of all of these people. But I mean, it'd be a nightmare. The idea of trying to do that. Bob, were you? Okay, so they could get the news spread, okay, since they didn't have the first two, but but the idea of trying to get this word out and trying to spread this message, but not only that, how much hassle is it for you to move? Jim, you just moved. Was it a nice, easy, smooth? You just decided, you and Kim, okay, we're gonna move tomorrow. No, it doesn't work that way. I mean, it's just a nightmarish kind of planning and preparing, getting this all done, getting that all done to just make this move. And so now, and you're just talking one family, versus 2 to 3 million people to try to get them to go. So shortly after they cross over the Red Sea, that little okay, it's doing nothing now. Okay. Anyway, so in your imagination, where you see that Sinai Peninsula, or on your handout there, that finger on the left is the Red Sea that they're crossing over. We back up now? Oh, hey, we're going way ahead now. So let me go back. Oh, hey, there we go. There we go. All right. So that Red Sea is the blue finger on the left, the peace sign. And that's where they cross over. They miraculously cross over on dry land. They come to the Sinai Peninsula. And it says in chapter 19 and verse 2 of the book of Exodus, Israel camped there before the mountain. Now, at this traditional site of Mount Sinai that's on the Sinai Peninsula down there at the southern tip, as I mentioned, there is a huge open plain that stretches for thousands of acres, and it would be large enough or suitable for a huge encampment. So it really does make sense that Sinai, this most well-known mountain in all of the Bible, although we don't know exactly where it is, that this is probably it. So Moses ascends Mount Sinai. He speaks with God. The Lord promises to be with the Israelite people if they will follow him and if they will obey his laws. He says in chapter 19, verses 5 and 6 of Exodus, "You shall be a special treasure to me above all people. For all the earth is mine, and you shall be to me a kingdom and a priest and a holy nation." So how significant is that God would make such a promise to the Israelite people? Right? Okay. Right. Especially this hasn't happened yet. It has to a degree, you're right, but when they wander, quote unquote, in the wilderness for 40 years, that hasn't happened yet. That's happening after the mountain because they're going to go up to the land itself. But how significant is it to have such a promise that you're my people? Of all the people of the earth, you're my people. Yeah, not only is he a mighty and powerful God, but look at what he's doing for us. That's how the Israelite people should feel. This is absolutely amazing. Out of all of the people that populate the earth, God has selected this family of people. I will be with you. You are a special treasure to me, and I will be with you. You will be mine. I will be yours. I will make you a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. Now, I don't know how significant we understand that to be, but the priests were kind of the upper echelon of the day. And so he says, in essence, I'm going to make all of you this special class of people. You're going to be a nation of priests. You're going to be a holy nation. So out of all of the people of the earth, God chose them. Now, they should feel extremely honored and proud and pleased and certainly humbled by that. So the people wholeheartedly agree to follow God. They decide, we're in lock, stock, and barrel. God then orders them to set up borders around Mount Sinai so that nobody comes up on the mountain, nobody even touches the mountain. Look at chapter 19, verses 16 through 18. Then it came to pass on the third day in the morning, that there was thundering and lightning and a thick cloud on the mountain, and the sound of the trumpet was very loud, so that all the people who were in the camp trembled. And Moses brought the people out of the camp to meet with God, and they stood at the foot of the mountain. Now Mount Sinai was completely in smoke, because the Lord descended upon it in fire, and its smoke ascended like the smoke of a furnace, and the whole mountain quaked greatly. So, in essence, God's calling Israel out. Moses calls them all out to come meet with God, and it's like you're standing at the base of a volcano that's ready to blow. There's smoke, there's thunder, there's lightning, there's darkness. This mountain is shaking and quaking, and Moses calls the people out to come and meet with God and stand around the mountain, as it were. Verse 18 says, now all of the people witnessed the thundering. Verse 18. All the people witnessed the thundering, the lightning, the flashes, the sound of the trumpet, the mountain smoking. When the people saw it, they trembled and they stood afar off. And then they said to Moses, you speak with us, and we will hear, but let not God speak with us, lest we die. So the people stood afar off, and Moses drew near in the thick darkness where God was. It's almost comical to me that here is this mountain shaking, and fire and smoke and thunder and lightning, and the people say, we're okay, Moses, you go ahead and go talk to God. We'll just stay here. We'll stay here. You go talk to God. Come back and tell us what he said, and you talk to us, because if we do it, we're not going to make it. We're going to die if we go into the presence of God. So Moses does. Moses walks into the darkness, and he walks to the mountain. And so this is similar to what it would look like when you see the shadow that's up on part of it there. But when the light shines against it, that orangish red pink stone that looks like it's almost on fire. But just imagine that in darkness and thunder and light, in the terrific thunder and lightning storms that we have here, and smoke and shaking mountain, and you decide, okay, I'm going to go walk up the mountain now. And that's what Moses does. God summons him. He comes up the mountain, chapter 24, verses 16 to 18. There he meets with God. And how long is he gone? 40 days, okay? He's gone for almost a month and a half. So you're one of these people down in the camp of Israel, and what do you know has happened? Huh? Well, what do you suppose is, you think you know what's happened. He's dead. He didn't make it. That would be your first thought, obviously. I don't want to go up the mountain. I want you to go up the mountain. You go talk with God, come back and tell us. And it's been a month and a half almost. Things didn't go well up on the mountain for Moses. So, why was he up there so long? I don't know, okay? That's one of those questions. Bible doesn't tell us why it was. But he's up there for almost a month and a half. So Moses comes back down, and while he is up there, he's received the law of God, or the law of Moses, or the word of God. He receives that, chapter 32, verses 10 through 20, and chapter 34, verses 1 and 2. So why did Moses have to go up a second time up the mountain? Okay, yeah, because as he came down, he's carrying, and we've all seen them. They're oval on the top, right? And they're big enough that he has to. You've seen the pictures. Charlton Heston carried them as well. For those of you who are older, but he comes down the mountain. He's got these two tablets or tables of stone, and Aaron says what? I'm not Aaron. Who is this? Joshua. I'm sorry. Joshua says to him what? Yeah, there's something happening down in the camp, and we're not sure if it's a war, or are they rejoicing? Is it happiness? What's going on? And Moses said the people have broken loose. They'd already made a commitment, and we could read that they already knew what some of the law was. And so Moses throws the two tables of stone, or the tablets of stone, down. They break, and I don't know if God says, I wrote those, because God wrote them with his own finger, it said, the first. But Moses comes down, he sees the people worshiping the golden calf, he throws them down, and then he has to go back up again, and he receives a second copy, as it were, of the law. So that's what we're familiar with. We're mostly familiar with that. But there's a second incident that happens at Mount Sinai. Later, many, many years later, Elijah, the prophet of God, sees the false prophets of Baal. He takes them to the brook Kishon, and he kills them. And as a result, the wicked king Ahab and his wife Jezebel send a message to Elijah and said this in 1 Kings chapter 19 and verse 2, "So let the gods do to me, and more also, if I do not make your life as the life of one of those by tomorrow about this time." What is that? What is that code for saying? I'm going to kill you. Okay. Like you killed them, I'm going to kill you. In fact, it's going to happen before tomorrow at this time. So when Elijah reads this message, he runs for his life, literally, and he finally ends up at chapter 19 and verse 8 of 1 Kings. He ends up at Horeb, the mountain of God. So he's at Mount Sinai now. In chapter 19, verses 4 to 8, but he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness and came and sat down under a broom tree, and he prayed that he might die. This is Elijah. And said, it is enough. Now, Lord, take my life, for I am no better than my fathers. Then as he lay down and slept under a broom tree, suddenly an angel touched him and said unto him, arise and eat. And he looked, and there was by his head was a cake baked on the coals and a jar of water. So he ate and drank, and he lay down again. And an angel of the Lord came back a second time, touched him, and said unto him, arise and eat, because the journey is too great for you. So he arose, he ate, and he drank, and he went in the strength of that food 40 days and 40 nights as far as Horeb, the mountain of God. So there's the 40 days again. 40. We find this number of times throughout Scripture. Whether that's an exact timing, I would doubt that it is. I'm thinking it's used somewhat symbolically. But he's going 40 days and 40 nights as far as to get to Mount Horeb. So then Elijah was despondent, felt that he was the only faithful follower of God in all of Israel, but God assured him there are more than 7,000 that he didn't know about. So, I mean, having those two incidents in mind that happened at Mount Sinai, we'll do like we did last week. What are some things that we can learn from those incidents if we're going to be mountain men and try to absorb or understand what's going on? What are some things we learn from it? It's the mountain of God. It is a mountain of... Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, that he comes down upon this mountain to meet with them. Okay. Yes, sir, Guy. Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, I think that is a good thought. In fact, as we mentioned in the first class, that mountains were regarded highly suspicious or superstitious, I should say, as far as the different pagan religions of the day. They thought because partly of that, they pointed to God, they pointed upward to God. Carl? Okay. Yeah, that's a really good point too. And the other part of that is that we don't have the ability to know a lot of times who is and who's not. And Elijah thinks he's the only one, and God said, "Oh no! I've got 7,000 more who haven't bowed the knee to Baal." But yeah, you're right. If what a support system and how tragic it would be on the other side. Al? Okay, yeah, I think that's a great point as well. Sure, sure. Um, Right? Right. Okay. Yeah, that's exactly right. That we've been selected. I mean, out of all of the people of the world, God has chosen to put his blessing upon his followers or his saints. All right. Richard. Okay. 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 Yeah, so we're not going to get the answer by 8 o'clock tonight. Yeah, I mean that you're right that we end up on these journeys and God's leading in our life, or we should be allowing him to, but we don't always know where it's going to end. Jay? Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and it would have been easy for. I mean, God even says, "Step aside. I'm going to start a new nation out of you." And Moses says, "No, no." I mean, he really has a great abounding love for his people, and that's a very good point. Um, we can learn God is absolutely, entirely holy. If we look at the law itself, we can learn that God is a jealous God, as he says of himself, Exodus chapter 20. God is all powerful. The idea that he can take this mountain and make it smoke and shake and fire and lightning and thunder and all of that, that he's able to do that. But God is merciful and he's kind and he's forgiving. He's full of grace. We can see that. There's just so many principles that we're able to look at the mountain, just see what happened in these two incidents, and to say, okay, there's a lot we can learn about God, and maybe even a lot we can learn for ourselves to put into our life. And I would say the ultimate is that, I mean, God knows. God knows what's going on. I don't always know. All right, somebody else have something? Okay, we'll move on. So Mount Nebo is directly east of the northern tip of the Dead Sea. On the eastern side of Transjordan, or East Jordan land, as it's often called. So it's located in present-day Jordan, and itself is part of a ridge. It reaches only about 2,400 feet tall, so that we're not talking some gigantic mountain. And you can see, let's see if I have it in the next picture. Yeah, it's almost it's part of a ridge, and it's not that nearly abrupt as we think of sometimes a mountain. It doesn't ascend that high, but because of the Dead Sea. What do you know about the Dead Sea and that area topographically? Yeah, it's below sea level. So actually the mountain looks to be about 4,000 feet tall, okay, even though it's only about 2,400 feet above sea level. But because you're starting at such a lower plane, it looks even higher if you're on the western side of that. So, excuse me. So to understand the significance of Mount Nebo, we've got to consider some events that have happened prior to in the life of Moses again. He was tasked with the challenge of leading all of these people from Egypt into the promised land. Moses has to deal with what kind of people? How would you describe them? Huh? Which was? Stiff-necked, stubborn, okay? Yeah, I mean, they were ungrateful people. And Moses, okay, you get to be the leader, okay? So yeehaw, I get to lead 3 million people who are stiff-necked and stubborn. And so Moses tries to do that. In Numbers chapter 20, God specifically told Moses to Speak to the rock, chapter 20 and verse 8, to deliver water to the thirsty Israelites. Yet, here's what Moses does. It says, he spoke and he said, hear now, you rebels. He said, must we bring water to you from this rock? Then Moses lifted his hand, struck the rock twice with his rod, and water came out. Verses 10 and 11 of Numbers 20. So God said to speak to the rock. What does Moses do? Strikes the rock twice. Why in the world do you think that would come to Moses' mind? Yeah, because in chapter 17, that's what God told him to do before, strike the rock. And when he struck the rock before, what happened? Water came out, okay? So now, whether it's frustration, whether it's taking more upon himself, because he does say, must we bring water to you? Maybe Moses is feeling a little bit full of himself, but he strikes the rock 2 times, and yet still water comes out. So God does provide for them, and as a result of Moses' disobedience, he's disallowed to enter into the promised land of Canaan, Deuteronomy chapter 3. So when the Israelites were about to enter into Canaan, God tells Moses this in chapter 32, verses 49 and 50, go up on this mountain of the Abiram, Mount Nebo, which is across from Jericho, view the land of Canaan, and die on the mountain which you ascend, and be gathered to your people. So, that seems kind of harsh, doesn't it? It does to me. I mean, yeah, it seems. I've been dealing with these people for years and years. 38 and a half to 40 years Moses has been dealing with these stubborn, stiff-necked people. And he comes up to the rock and he hits it twice in frustration or whatever it is that leads him to do that. And God says, you can't go into the promised land. Actually, he did get to go to the promised land. He didn't get to go to that promised land of Canaan. So Moses, though, still wanted to go up. Chapter 3 of the book of Deuteronomy, verse 24 and 25. O Lord God, you have begun to show your servant your greatness and your mighty hand. For what God is there in heaven or on earth who can do anything like your works and your mighty deeds? I pray, let me cross over and see this good land beyond the Jordan, these pleasant mountains in Lebanon. So Moses has been pretty successful in the past talking with God, right? And praying and getting things done, getting things that he even wished and wanted. And so he says, Lord, you started a good work in me. How about let's finish it? I mean, that's kind of what he's saying. Let me go over. Let me view this good land. So if you're up on Mount Nebo, that's what you get to see. That's just one shot. There's actually some panoramic shots that you can look to the north and to the south, and you truly can get a wonderful view of the land of Canaan. And you can go online if you want to sometime this week. Look up Mount Nebo and look at some of the panoramic pictures that are taken. It's just really, you can see some actual videos that are done, and on clear days, it's astounding the view that you have. So God tells Moses to go up on this mountain, and you can look at the land. And it says, he takes him up on the mountain. So Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab, according to the word of the Lord. And he buried him in a valley in the land of Moab, opposite Beth Peor, but no one knows his grave to this day. I remember the first time that I read or saw this passage and understood it. It really struck me, and I preached a sermon called A Very Private Funeral, because it's only God and Moses. There's nobody else who's attending this funeral. And so Moses climbs up on Mount Nebo. He looks And the scripture says with an undimmed eye, he's able to see the promised land. He sees all of that, and then he dies. And God comes down and buries Moses on the mountain. And so there's this beautiful picture of God coming down, scooping the earth away, and placing his servant in this grave and covering it back up, and nobody knows where that grave is. I mean, that just strikes me. That's something that's just such a poignant moment. There's a profound mystery about it. But I think something that makes it even more intriguing is in the New Testament. In the book of Jude, the short little one-chapter book of Jude, in verse 9, for some reason, Michael, the archangel, has he stands his ground, as it were, because Satan wants the body of Moses. And he argues with Michael, the archangel, about it. Now, we know there's not one other verse in all of the Bible that says anything about that. Jude 9 is the only verse that gives us any picture of what happened. So that tells me there are things that are happening behind the scenes in the spiritual realm that we don't know anything about and that aren't even revealed to us. And I would assume if this is one incident, I would assume there have been hundreds, yea, thousands of incidents that have happened. The book of Daniel gives us some glimpses of how there are some things going on that we wouldn't know of behind the scenes in the spiritual realm. But here you have the devil arguing with Michael, the head angel, the archangel, and said, I want the body of Moses. And the archangel, it said, would not bring a rebuke against him, but rather says, the Lord rebuke you. But why would the devil want Moses' body? What in the world what would he want with it? Okay, all right, could be. Yeah, I mean, it could be that, look what I've got. Yeah, here is your supposed leader, but I've got him. Okay, that certainly could be. What else might he do? Or want? Why else might he want it? I mean, what if somebody found the bones of Moses? What if somebody found his grave, found his body, and they knew it was Moses? I mean, he had the little tag on it, said, hello, my name is Moses. And so they knew it was Moses. What could a person do with that? Okay, yeah, exactly. Set it up as an idol, absolutely, and say, so here is your leader. Here is Moses, and the Israelites, as they were so wont to follow idolatry, it certainly would not be beyond the pale. In fact, I would consider that would be a major coup, a major victory for the Satan if he gets it. But whatever the reason is, that tells me that there are spiritual battles that are being fought beyond what I'm able to see or know at any given time. And so Moses dies and God buries him. Again, that's just a beautiful, beautiful picture. By the way, who's going to be the leader now that Moses is dead? Joshua is. And did that happen? How did that happen? I mean, after he died, what? Yeah, before he died, that actually it was a very visible sign that Moses brought Joshua up in front of the people, placed the mantle literally on him. This is mantle of leadership. It showed to the people, passing it on. This is your man now. This is your leader, he's saying in essence, of Joshua. And so Joshua is going to be the leader now that takes them beyond this place. But Mount Nebo is significant in that regard. So tell me some things. What are some things that we can learn if we mountaineer alongside of Moses and ascend this final ascent of his life? and go up on Mount Nebo. What are some messages or lessons we learn? Okay, all right, the grave danger of not following his word, or what we might say the consequences of sin, okay? And so, I mean, we see the consequences of sin today, right? I mean, a person commits adultery and wrecks his life, or wrecks his marriage and home life. A person gets drunk and they get in a car and they kill somebody, this drunk driver. I mean, we see the results of sin. In our own life, the stupid things that we do when we turn away from God's plan, and the mess that we make for our own life. Okay, what else do we learn? Yeah, Edwin? Okay. Okay, yeah, very good. That's exactly right. Okay, good thought. Edwin, you were... Okay, all right. Okay, yeah, so we're able to see the justice of God, but we also see the compassion and the grace of God, and which gives me hope, and should give us all hope to say that, yeah, God does have requirements of this is what he, but God's also a God full of grace and compassion. Richard, you had your hand up. Exactly. There's such a beautiful tenderness about it. Yeah, that shows that of a family. But that's a good way to put it. It's just God and Moses on the mountain, and it's so very private. To go along with that, I would say something that struck me is that God knows best, because Moses wanted to go into Canaan, but God says what? You can come home with me. Okay. I mean, that's the beautiful aspect of it. He didn't spend any longer time here on this earth. Yeah, you might have gotten to see the land, the promised land, go taste some of the fruit, drink some of the water, whatever. But God says, no, I know what's best, and you can come home and be with me. So there's a tenderness about it. Go ahead, Al. Yeah. That's right. Yeah, and that again, the grace or the compassion of God that should help us, to understand and to appreciate who God is and what He does. And at the time of Moses, just put this in your mind for just kind of a stark reality. At the time of Moses' death, it was only God and Moses, which is really no different from any of us. At the time of our last breath, it's going to be us and God. I mean, I might have family all around me. You could die at a football stadium with 80,000 people around you, but your final breath is between you and God. And so there is this aspect of being right with God and trying to live in that way. I thought that's all Carl's saying. Again, the importance, hopefully you begin to see the significance of what these mountains and what happens on these mountains or in the shadow of these mountains. Just some of the greatest events. Next week we're going to talk about Mounts Ebal and Gerizim. They're almost always tied together, those two mountains, Ebal and Gerizim. They are next to each other. And that's right. And then we'll talk about Mount Carmel as well next week. And as I mentioned before, we're in the spring, did some more check-ins, don't have any firm date or numbers yet, but a bunch of us guys are going to go be mountain men and in the spring next year, and we're going to go climb Mount LeConte. And so when I get more information, I'll share that with you. And thank you for being here tonight, and you may pass out if you haven't already.